Hi, and welcome to the ACES Centre. This is the Unit of Competency ICAA 5044B, How to Develop System Infrastructure Design Plan. This will address the following elements: specify architecture requirements, specify hardware and software, conduct walkthrough and compare and contrast expected performance criteria against vendor proposed offerings, document and report on findings. Element 1. Specify architecture requirements. This will assess the following performance criteria. Identify the critical principles, functions, and framework for the system to operate across business units, taking into account the project deliverables, acceptance criteria, and current IT blueprint. Organise the functions into layers or wrappings and components to meet business requirements. Identify the processing environment, the hardware, network, and software required to support the operational environments. Refine the system topology model, templates and standards to guide development. Utilise the project guidelines, standards, models, acceptance criteria, and general framework to develop the architecture. Element 2. Specify hardware and software. This will assess the following performance criteria. Evaluate various products and vendors against the requirements of the architecture to determine the best IT solution. Estimate and evaluate current and future capacity requirements against client future requirements. Identify the requirements for upgrade or change through analysis of software versions and interoperability status of existing system and applications. Element 3. Conduct walkthrough and compare and contrast expected performance criteria against vendor proposed offerings. This will assess the following performance criteria. Compare the requirements model against technical specifications and acceptance criteria. Benchmark the requirements model against current industry standards and IT blueprint for performance, interoperability, and expected future organisational requirements. Element 4. Document and report on findings. This will assess the following performance criteria. Prepare the system infrastructure design plan, including hardware, network and software, and general infrastructure aspects. Document recommendations for improvement and refer to the appropriate person. From doing this unit of competency, you will gain the following knowledge: current industry accepted hardware and software products, broad general knowledge of the client business domain, particularly the business function and organisation, for example when specifying architecture requirements. Basic knowledge of cabling and telecommunication technologies, for example when specifying architecture requirements. Broad knowledge of vendor product directions and technology directions, for example when specifying hardware and software. Networking technologies, including broad knowledge of general features and capabilities, incorporating substantial depth in some areas, for example, when specifying architecture requirements. Broad knowledge of systems architectural design principles and methodologies, for example, when specifying architecture requirements. Broad knowledge of modelling techniques and methodologies, for example, when specifying architecture requirements, and for comparing and contrasting, after walkthrough of expected performance criteria against vendor proposed offerings. From doing this unit of competency, you will acquire the following skills: problem-solving skills for a broad range of unpredictable problems involving analysis, diagnosis and evaluation, for example when specifying the critical principles, functions and framework for the system to operate across the enterprise or business units, taking into consideration the project deliverables, acceptance criteria and current IT blueprint. Plain English literacy and communication skills in relation to analysis, evaluation and presentation of information, for example when the initial statement of hardware needs is written. Group facilitation and presentation skills in relation to transferring and collecting information. For example, when estimating current and future capacity requirements and evaluating against clients' future requirements, and for documenting recommendations for improvement and referring them to appropriate technical specialists. Questioning and active listening skills, for example, when specifying the critical principles, functions and framework for the system to operate across the enterprise or business units, taking into consideration the project deliverables, acceptance criteria and current IT blueprint. Technological capability assessment skills involving analysis, diagnosis and evaluation, for example when evaluating various products against architecture requirements to determine the best IT solution, and for estimating current and future capacity requirements and evaluating against clients' future requirements. Research skills for specifying, analysing and evaluating broad features of a particular business domain and best practice in system development. For example, when evaluating various products against architecture requirements to determine the best IT solution, and for benchmarking requirements model against current industry standards and IT blueprint for performance, interoperability and expected future organisational needs. Project planning skills in relation to set benchmarks and identified scope. For example, when specifying the current principles, functions and framework for the system to operate across the enterprise or business units, taking into consideration the project deliverables, acceptance criteria and current IT blueprint. Report writing skills for business requiring depth in some areas, analysis and evaluation of information in a defined range of areas. For example, when documenting recommendations for improvement and referring them to appropriate technical specialists. This is the end of the relevant information for this unit of competency. Thank you.